Does 2020 feel recent to you? Or does it feel like something that happened to a completely different person, in a different life? Both, probably, at the exact same time. That contradiction is the whole subject of this video. Chronologically, it wasn't that long ago. Emotionally, there's a strange, doubled sensation around it, like looking through the wrong end of a telescope and the right end at once, close and impossibly far. That gap between what the calendar says and what your nervous system insists is true has a name in psychology. But before we get to names, sit with the actual question underneath it. Does time actually speed up as you get older? Or is something changing inside you, while time itself just sits there, completely indifferent, doing nothing different at all? Humans have been arguing about this for as long as there's been writing to argue in. The Greeks gave time two separate gods, which tells you something already. Chronos, devouring his own children the instant they're born. Time, as pure consumption, nothing escapes being eaten by it. And Ananke, necessity, the force even the gods themselves couldn't overrule. Not one god, two, because time apparently needed to be feared in two different ways at once, both as a monster and as an unbreakable law. Marcus Aurelius, writing his private notebook centuries later, somewhere on a military campaign, arrived at a much quieter response to the same monster. Time is a river of passing events, he wrote, and strong is its current. He didn't fight the current. He told himself, repeatedly, to stop expecting the river to behave like something solid. Everything is only for a day, he wrote, both that which remembers and that which is remembered. Not comforting exactly, but it's a different relationship to the same fear the Greeks turned into a monster. Acceptance instead of dread. Here's where it gets personal and slightly uncomfortable. Why did a single summer at 8 years old feel longer than an entire year does to you now? There's a real answer, and it isn't nostalgia lying to you. At 8, almost everything is new. New school, new friends, new information arriving constantly, and your brain, forced to actually process each of those moments individually, lays down memory after memory, densely packed. Your 40s, statistically, contain far fewer new experiences. Same commute, same rooms, same conversations, on repeat. And here's the part that should genuinely bother you. Your brain doesn't file repeated experiences as new memories at all. It compresses them. A year of near-identical Tuesdays gets stored, essentially, as one Tuesday, replayed in your imagination, as though it happened once instead of 50 times. When you look back later, there's simply less there to look back on, so the year appears to have vanished, not because it went by faster, because there's less of it left, on the shelf, to weigh in your hand. This runs on something neuroscientists call predictive processing. Your brain isn't a camera recording everything faithfully as it happens. It's closer to a prediction engine, constantly guessing what's about to happen next based on what usually happens, and only bothering to actually notice, to actually encode, whatever breaks the prediction. Walk the same route to work every day, and your brain stops registering most of it, because it already knows what's coming. Walk somewhere new, and suddenly you notice everything, because there's nothing yet to predict from. Habit, in other words, isn't just convenient. It's a kind of quiet erasure, running constantly in the background of your life, deleting the ordinary as it happens, keeping only the interruptions, which raises an old, almost desperate question. If time keeps consuming everything, can it be defeated? The oldest story we have on record, the Epic of Gilgamesh, is already asking exactly this, 4,000 years ago. Gilgamesh, terrified after watching his closest friend die, travels to the edge of the known world, chasing a plant that grants eternal life. He finds it. A snake eats it while he's bathing. That's the ending. Not tragic in some grand cosmic sense, almost bureaucratic in its cruelty. He gets close enough to touch immortality and loses it to an accident of timing. We're still running some version of this exact expedition, just with better instruments now. Longevity researchers study telomeres, the protective caps sitting on the ends of your chromosomes, shortening slightly with every cell division, functioning almost like a countdown clock built directly into your DNA. Some labs are actively working on ways to slow or even reverse that shortening. Suppose they eventually succeed, and suppose you live to be 200. Here's the uncomfortable follow-up question nobody in that research seems eager to answer. Would that actually solve the problem this video opened with? Or would 200 years of repetition simply compress the exact same way a normal year already does, leaving you, at the end of it, feeling like your childhood was still the only part that actually happened? There's a second, quieter strategy humans have run in parallel with the search for literal immortality, and you've probably done it yourself this week without thinking twice about it. We record things, obsessively. Photography freezes a single instant and refuses to let it fully disappear. Film goes further, showing people moving, laughing, turning their heads toward someone who called their name, decades after every one of them has died. There's something genuinely strange about watching old home footage. You're watching motion, aliveness itself, generated entirely by people time has already finished with. Writing does something similar, preserving a specific train of thought so precisely that reading it later can feel like eavesdropping. Every archive, every family photo album, every old voicemail nobody's deleted, functions as a small, quiet rebellion against the fact that everything, eventually, gets consumed. We can't beat Chronos, so we keep trying to leave notes for whoever comes looking after we're gone. But step back from psychology and archives for a second and ask something more basic. Does time, in the way you're imagining it right now, actually exist at all? Isaac Newton thought yes, straightforwardly. Absolute time, he called it, flowing uniformly, everywhere in the universe, whether anything happens inside it or not. An empty container that existence simply happens to sit inside. Einstein broke this completely. Time, in relativity, isn't uniform anywhere. It runs at different rates depending on how fast you're moving and how strong the gravity is around you. A clock on a mountaintop genuinely ticks faster than an identical clock in a valley, measurably, not as an illusion. This means the time your body actually feels, the psychological kind this whole video has been circling, and the time physics actually measures, are not the same phenomenon wearing two names. They're two entirely different things that happen to share one English word, and human intuition, built by evolution to survive on one planet at walking speed, was never equipped to feel the difference. Aristotle, working roughly 2,000 years before either Newton or Einstein, arrived at something closer to the psychological answer than the physical one, through pure reasoning alone. Time, he argued, isn't some independent container things happen to move through. Time is the measure of motion, is what allows change to be counted and compared at all. which leads him to a genuinely strange thought experiment. Imagine a completely motionless universe. Nothing moving, nothing changing, anywhere, ever. Would time still be passing inside it? Aristotle's answer is no, because there would be nothing available for time to measure. No motion means nothing to count, and nothing to count means no time in any meaningful sense at all. Time, on this view, doesn't exist independently of change. It emerges directly out of change, the way a shadow emerges out of an object blocking light, not present on its own, only present in relation to something else actually happening. Augustine takes this even further inward and lands somewhere genuinely unsettling. In his Confessions, he tries to locate the present moment directly, precisely, and discovers he can't actually hold it still long enough to examine it. The moment he notices, now, it's already the past. The future doesn't exist yet, by definition. The past no longer exists, by definition. And the present, the only piece of time you're technically ever inside, has essentially no duration at all, a boundary between two forms of non-existence, rather than a solid place you could ever actually stand on. Which brings this all the way back to the pandemic feeling both close and distant at once. Maybe that isn't a glitch in your memory. Maybe it's the clearest possible glimpse of what time actually is. Not a river flowing steadily past you, the way Marcus Aurelius pictured it. Something closer to Augustine's impossible present, constantly dissolving the instant you try to hold it, densely remembered wherever real change occurred, nearly erased wherever it didn't, existing, in the end, not because a clock somewhere says so, but because something, somewhere, changed enough for there to be anything at all worth counting.